you so much. Oh my, thank you so much for that wonderful warm welcome. And Matt, thank you for those beautiful words of introduction. I don't deserve all of that, but I have to say it did kind of warm my heart this morning. So thank you very, very much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us to focus on strengthening our nation's support to 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers. And warm greetings to all those caregivers and foundation partners who are joining us online across America. Our goal for today is to look to the future to anticipate what is to come for those caring for our wounded, ill, and injured warriors, and to be ready for what comes. What challenges can we expect? What steps should we be taking now to address those challenges? What additional resources and knowledge will we need? Our foundation is going to create a research roadmap that will give us the foresight necessary for ensuring caregivers are supported not only today, but for years to come. The creation of that roadmap begins here with all of you. A task this critical requires teaming up with those dedicated to supporting our military community. That's why I'm so grateful that Secretary McDonnell agreed enthusiastically to co-host this first-of-its-kind event. As everyone knows, the mission of the United States Department of Veterans Affairs is simply enormous, and it's growing every day. Yet each time we bring caregivers together, Secretary McDonnell makes it his priority to participate. Thank you, Secretary Bob, for meeting with our caregivers, hearing their concerns, and listening to their perspectives and ideas. You are a true champion for our hidden heroes, and we thank your great team who were so instrumental in making today possible. Thank you also to the Mayo Clinic for your lead participation. The knowledge and expertise of Dr. Amit Sood and Dr. Joan Griffin will add tremendous value to the substance of our conversations. The challenges our caregivers face are complex indeed, and we are fortunate to have your commitment to help us address these challenges head on. And my gratitude extends to all of today's speakers and panelists who agreed to enrich this event with their ideas and experiences. Thank you so much for participating. Today's proceedings would not be possible without two amazing sponsors. First, our signature sponsor, Philips. We're so proud to have the support of a company that does so much to help caregivers. Their commitment today to our hidden heroes is just the beginning of a wonderful partnership that will benefit countless military families. I'm also deeply grateful to our host sponsor, Hilton Hotels. Hilton donated the use of all this space and provided accommodations for 60 Dole Caregiver Fellows who traveled to Washington this week. And all those airline miles it took to fly our fellows here were provided by American Airlines. This is the third year, ladies and gentlemen, that American has brought our fellows together from the 50 states. Please join me in thanking all these wonderful organizations. Yes. I have one word to say. Bravo to the executive director of my foundation, Steve Schwab, who did a brilliant job in planning and overseeing all the details. And heartfelt thanks to Gia, Pavel, Laurel, Madison, Emery, and Anne Marie for each of their important roles. Extremely well done. I'm so proud of my team, ladies and gentlemen. As many of you know, the Hidden Heroes campaign was launched yesterday from the U.S. Capitol, a campaign intended to lead a national movement in support of our military and veteran caregivers. We unveiled the new website to connect caregivers with carefully vetted resources and a community of support at hiddenheroes.org. We introduced many of our campaign leaders and ambassadors, and we were joined by our campaign chairman, as you know, Tom Hanks, who has already begun calling America's attention to our hidden heroes. The launch energized and motivated us all, and we'll certainly need that energy and motivation today as the hard work begins. As part of our Hidden Heroes launch, I announced that our foundation was rededicating itself to a bold vision for the future, an America where every military caregiver is empowered, appreciated, and recognized for their service to our nation. It is a hopeful vision made possible by the incredible work of our partners, many of whom are with us today. Yet as much faith as I have that working together we can help lead our nation to fulfill this vision, I know that the future carries with it new challenges and additional complicated questions for our caregivers. As you know, our RAND research revealed evidence of the military caregiver crisis in America and pointed to the most urgent gaps in caregiver support. The research has been instrumental in shaping not only our foundation's work, but the newly created services and programs of many of our partners. At the same time, we knew then, and RAND knew, that the situations faced by caregivers would evolve. Yet the longitudinal data on exactly what that means and what our nation needs to do to help is missing. We have a knowledge gap. The only thing we know for certain is that if it's left unaddressed, many of the caregivers' challenges are likely to grow worse. And in some circumstances, the simple passage of time will bring even more disturbing issues. It's only been 2 years since the RAND report's release, and sadly, we're already seeing those new difficulties emerge. Despite our best efforts, we've watched strained relationships between caregivers and care recipients begin to break. Caregivers struggling with their financial sacrifices and joblessness have suffered extraordinary debt. Some have neared the brink of homelessness. Those caring for a veteran with a traumatic brain injury hold out hope for promising new treatments, while also bracing themselves for the potential of long-term impairment and the early onset of dementia. The mental stress of serving as a military caregiver for years, if not decades to come, has set in as the new normal. As a result, some caregivers have succumbed to depression. Others have struggled with far worse. Last February, Secretary McDonnell invited me to speak at the VA's Summit on Suicide Prevention in order to bring the unspoken issue of caregiver suicide into the light. Suicide ideations among caregivers are so taboo that caregivers don't often speak about them, even among themselves. Disturbingly, though, these feelings are alarmingly common. One caregiver confessed that she'd be surprised if anyone had been a caregiver for a severely injured veteran for more than 3 years without having the thought of suicide cross her mind. We cannot let this issue be swept under the rug again. Our foundation called attention to another painful, overlooked issue earlier this year when we worked with NPR to share the stories of caregivers who face domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. Our goal was certainly not to assert any kind of connection between post-traumatic stress and violence. Each of us knows the dangers of making such an assumption. But violence in a caregiver-care recipient relationship makes a terribly difficult situation more complicated and much harder to resolve. Like suicide, intimate partner violence among our caregivers cannot be an issue that falls off the table. We must talk about it, and we must address it. These are the challenges that we take on today, the issues that evolve and increase in complexity over time, and the disturbing trends that have managed to remain hidden and unaddressed. As we explore them, we should heed a wise projection made by RAND's experts about the future of supporting caregivers. An uncoordinated response is unsustainable. America needs to step up to support our hidden heroes. Gaps in support must be filled. But heaven forbid we make the mistake of creating a maze of resources filled with redundancies. Caregivers will become discouraged and lose hope if there's not a crystal clear direction for how to receive that desperately needed help. We should also keep in mind that our response to the caregiver crisis must be prepared to weather the political and economic changes of years and decades to come. We have been at war for more than 15 years. With many of our troops home, Americans may choose to turn their attention to other issues. This could lead to fewer donations and smaller budgets for organizations supporting veterans and caregivers. Such a possibility is even more reason for us to ensure coordination and efficiency. To keep America focused on the priorities of both today and tomorrow, and to fill the knowledge gap about what is to come, our foundation has once again partnered with RAND. Later this afternoon, Terry Tennelian, co-author of our 2014 study, will walk us through a new research framework for how we can anticipate and address the future challenges of our hidden heroes. As I mentioned earlier, we will use the discussions, the ideas, the expertise shared here today as the start of this research roadmap. Terry and her colleagues did a marvelous job on our first study. Since it's been the bedrock of our response to the caregiver crisis thus far, I feel more assured about being prepared for what lies ahead with the RAND team once again carefully studying the issues. We have an ambitious mission ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen, but the unwavering commitment of those of you in this room and our partners and supporters gives me confidence that our country will find solutions to every major challenge facing our hidden heroes. My former boss, President Ronald Reagan, once said, "Our children can walk into tomorrow with the knowledge that no one can be denied the promise that is America." Ladies and gentlemen, our caregivers can head into the future with equal certainty, because as President Reagan shared about America, her heart is full, her torch is still golden, her future bright. She has arms big enough to comfort and strong enough to support, for the strength in her arms is the strength of her people. Thank you all again for being with us today. Thank you for demonstrating our nation's enduring ability to comfort and support. Our hidden heroes take such good care of those who cared for us, and their responsibilities will continue years into the future. Let's ensure that they do not face their challenges alone. Thank you so very much. God bless you.
We forgot to put Jennifer McInday in her staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's my fault. Thank you, Senator Dole. I'm not in the position to do this very often, but I get to work with Senator every single day. And I just want to take a moment to reflect on the fact that my boss is a volunteer. This is her main mission in her life. And she comes into the office every single day determined to make a difference for all the caregivers that are in this room and those that are not. And I get to watch it every day, and I get to be a part of it. And it's humbling, thrilling, and inspiring. She really is carrying the torch. And Senator, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and for everybody in this room for all the work that you're doing for caregivers. I also want to acknowledge another important staff member at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Jennifer McInday. Jennifer, are you in the room? There she is. Jennifer, thank you for all your help today as well. And Senator mentioned a really important exercise that's going to happen throughout the day, but mostly toward the end of our day. And that means no one can leave this conference until we're complete. And that's the formulation of that research roadmap. Terry and her colleagues from RAND have a table outside so that conversation can happen all day as you have your breaks. Go interact with the folks at the RAND table, begin to have a discussion on what's on your mind from a research perspective, and you'll see that happen all throughout the day. But you have to be here at the end or you won't be part of it. Right, Terry? Great. One of my favorite parts of my job at the foundation is seeing how folks respond when Senator Dole shares with them the signs of America's caregiver crisis. And I was honored to be in the room when we had such a meeting with Secretary Bob. I think it was right after you started. It was one of the best meetings we've had since I've been at the foundation, because Senator Bob, I just promoted you. Secretary Bob, he'll keep the secretary's job. Secretary Bob showed then what I think all of us have seen over time. He is an innovator. He is genuine and passionate about his job. He's a veteran. He's a West Point graduate. And he's an ally and a partner, not just to caregivers, but in his veteran-centric work, transforming the VA from top to bottom. You could see that live out in the great work in the office that Matt heads of strategic partnerships, which enables organizations like ours to seamlessly work with the VA, many of the organizations in this room, to more seamlessly work with the VA. It's extraordinary. And nobody has shown such an immediate and sustained commitment to our military caregivers. Secretary Bob has prioritized supporting our hidden heroes by strengthening the VA's caregiver support program, which our good friend Meg Cabot heads. Meg, thank you for all your work and partnership. And the reforms that he is making in how our nation cares for its veterans and helping reduce the load carried by our caregivers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome Secretary of Veterans Affairs and our partner today, Bob McDonald.
Thanks, Steve, for that kind introduction. And what you do and what Senator Dole does inspires me every single day and makes me want to work harder on behalf of veterans and their families. Being a veteran, many of us have seen the outcomes of war, have seen the effect not just on the veterans, but on the families, and I see it every single day as I tour our facilities all over the country. I think at last count, I've been to 344 facilities in about 2 years. And I just wish that before our politicians would talk about sending our young men and women into battle, they would visit our hospitals and talk to our families and talk to those who get sent into harm's way. It provides a gravity and a solemnity that I think is important. And of course, I so admire Senator Dole for all that she's done and all that the organization has done. Hers is the highest example I can think of passion, of compassion, and of vision. And it inspires all of us every day. So, Senator Dole, thank you. Elizabeth, thank you for co-hosting this event with us. And I'm convinced that the outcomes of this event are critical. We absolutely need to know what caregivers need, not just now, but into the future. You know, the thing that got the VA into trouble in 2014 was we didn't fully understand the aging of the veteran population. And that tax of greater care, more veterans, aging veterans, is really what got us into trouble. So we really need your insight, and we need to turn your insight into foresight and turn that foresight into forecast so that we can get ahead of and build the capability now that we're going to need years from now. My good friend Jim Collins likes to talk about leadership is building a clock rather than telling time. And what we've been about at the VA is building a clock, not telling time. So please help us add more of the parts to that clock today as we work together. Let me also speak directly to the veteran caregivers among you. I can't tell you how much I admire what you do. It's a legacy as old as our nation itself, and it's profoundly important to our veterans in so many ways. It's important because your work eases the suffering of our nation's beloved wounded, ill, and injured veterans. And it's important because it's your gentle push, sometimes a push that may even be more than gentle, that gets veterans in your care moving to that right appointment, to that right treatment, to that right equipment at the right time. Without you, it wouldn't happen. It's important because of the example of service and sacrifice that you all represent to all of us. And no one gives more to our nation's veterans than you do. I'd like all the veteran caregivers, if they would be able to stand so we can all recognize and appreciate what you do. Thank you. We love you and we appreciate you. Yesterday afternoon at the Capitol was a great start to the Hidden Heroes campaign. That was only a glimpse of powerful, productive attention that the Elizabeth Dole Foundation will continue to bring to veteran caregivers. This campaign needs to become a powerful national movement. People want to do good. People want to help veterans. And Elizabeth Dole and her foundation are showing the way. I think it's exactly, as I said yesterday, what President Lincoln meant when in his second inaugural address, he directed the nation to care for those who were born in the battle and their families. And notice, Lincoln called out the families. Even then, even in the Civil War, we understood the important role of families and caregiving. VA announced our expanded partnership with Coursera that brings caregivers into the fold. We announced the expansion of beneficiary travel benefits to include Uber and Lyft as eligible rideshare options for caregivers. And I promised yesterday to tell you today about what Amazon's doing. First, let's see. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. It's still early, but by a show of hands, how many of you have used your smartphones or a digital device already today? Good news, we're all human beings. iPhone or Android, tablet, laptop, smartphone. How many of you are using them right now? Maybe taking notes, Twitter? Okay. All right, now stop and pay attention to me, would you please? I have this problem with my children. They both went to Duke like Senator Dole, but maybe didn't do as well. I don't know. No, they did great. Our cell phones, our tablets, our laptops, our desktops, our digital devices are pervasive and they are everywhere. That's why VA is using digital devices to transform how we care for veterans. Now, we have an app that lets you and your veterans access their official VA medical record and enter information about their health. It's called My VA Health, so please try it out. We're fielding and testing an app right now that will let you and your veterans schedule or request a primary care or mental health care appointment at the facility where they're receiving care. And we'll use that digital device to remind the veteran and the caregiver of that appointment, because oftentimes missed appointments for mental health is a waste of resources. Altogether, VA now has over 30 apps to augment and improve care that veterans are receiving. 19 apps are available right now. You can find them online. And 12 more are in the final stages of developing, some kind of beta test on their way to being rolled out. You can find them all at mobile.va.gov. And sorry, Tom, it's not .org, it's .gov. Let me say that again, mobile.va.gov. Take a look and see if these are helpful to you, and if they aren't, or you have new ideas for other apps that we could put together to help you, please let us know. Our job is to serve you, and we need to know what your needs are. We're trying to put the information that veterans want and need at their fingertips where they need it, and we're trying to do the same thing for caregivers. Now, Amazon's helping us because they're putting some great information at your fingertips too with their Kindle resources. Together with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Department of Veterans Affairs, Amazon has created a library of books that we hope you'll all find very helpful. Books on legal matters, children's books. They're all selected by caregivers and experts on caregiving. And you can access the Caregiver's Library from any mobile device. In a little bit, you'll hear more about this exciting news about what Amazon's doing for some wonderful caregivers. So again, please stay tuned. Now, nearly a year ago, VA established our Caregiver Support Program. It was just a pilot program that started essentially to determine how VA could improve assistance for caregivers. Here we are 9 years later, and I think we can agree that VA's Caregiver Support Program succeeded in that proof of concept phase. Our National Caregiver Support Line has fielded over 250,000 calls. They've been providing referrals to VA's Caregiver Support Coordinators. There's one at every single VA medical facility, by the way. And sometimes they're simply listening. Sometimes they're providing support. Sometimes they're making connections. It all depends what's needed. Over 34,000 caregivers so far have completed the comprehensive caregiving training that we developed with Easter Seals. Easter Seals is a terrific partner. More than 32,000 caregivers have participated in VA's program of comprehensive assistance for caregivers. 4,000 have registered for VA's Building Better Caregivers, our 6-week online interactive course that we deliver in partnership with the National Council on Aging. Over the last 3 years, 3,400 veteran caregivers have taken advantage of VA's Veteran Caregiver Series. These 4 courses, about 3 hours each in length, are helping caregivers with problem solving, dealing with stress, maintaining their own health, and much, much more. And so far, 350 caregivers are participating in our Caregiver Peer Support Mentoring Program. The Peer Support Mentoring Program is linking less experienced caregivers with more experienced caregivers so that they can share advice, experiences, and wisdom. So VA has a lot of people and a lot of different resources offering some pretty important support to caregivers to help them succeed better, to help them cope better, and to help them help their veterans better. But there are about 5.5 million, as we heard yesterday, military and veteran caregivers in the United States. Over 1 million of those are post 9/11 caregivers. And for all that good work, today's VA is only touching only a fraction of them. So we need your help. Last week, I spoke to the Coalition to Transform Advanced Care, CTAC, at their summit. Like you, CTAC is about looking forward, deciding what's needed, and building capability before we get there. They're working to understand why today's challenges with the aging population, why they are what they are, and they're beginning to prepare for that uncertain future of a rapidly aging population in this country. In 1960, only 2.2 million veterans were over the age of 65. By 2020, nearly 10 million veterans will be over the age of 65. And right behind them are our post 9/11 veterans, our youngest veteran population, who have been at war for the last 15 years. They're battling injuries like we've never seen before. And we don't know exactly how these wounds will affect them as they age, because it's never happened before, which means we don't have a good enough idea what that will mean to caregivers. So the challenges those 1.1 million post 9/11 caregivers are seeing today is only a glimpse, a very small glimpse of the demands that we may see in 2020, 2030, 2040. And this is what I keep telling Congress. Don't think that as a war winds down, the job is over. Before you send people into battle, you've got to think about 15, 20, 40 years hence. And building that capability now. Let's go back to what Jim Collins say. We've got to build a clock now to care for the veterans of the post 9/11 generation, or that capability won't be there 15, 20, 40 years from now. Why do we have to lurch from crisis to crisis and create transformation? Why can't we build the capability now? Congress, we need the money. Congress, we need the money, we need the laws to be able to build that capability. Why are we fighting about a budget 2 days before the end of a fiscal year? We put together 100 law changes that we needed with the President's 2017 budget. 40 were new this year. Over a dozen are absolutely essential for our ability to care for veterans. We have nursing homes turning veterans out of the nursing home because it's a small business, and the small business doesn't want to deal with the Federal Acquisition Rule Act, which requires mountains of paperwork to do business with the VA. We have emergency rooms where the standard in the private sector is you run 12-hour shifts. We can't run 12-hour shifts in the VA because of something called the 80-hour work period law. We have 550,000 appeals waiting to be judged based on an 80-year-old law. We wrote a new law. We work with veteran service organizations and others. We've given it to Congress, and we can't get it passed, even though everyone agrees it needs to be done. I could go on and on. But the point is that we're going to continue to work with Congress, that their support is invaluable. We've got to have it. And all of us have to work together to help our politicians transcend politics and get to what's doing right. I always like to think, and I know Sloan Gibson, our Deputy Secretary, we always go back to our experience at West Point, where we always prayed, part of the West Point Cadet Prayer, help us to choose the harder right rather than the easier wrong. Let's think about that. Let's all work together to do the harder right. It's going to take a team effort to get this done. It's going to take partnering with world-class institutions. It's nonprofit, for-profit, just like we're doing here today. And here's some of the examples of the kinds of partnerships and what they can do for veterans and their families. Veteran unemployment, and I see Mike Michaud here. Mike, where are you? Department of Labor, our partner. Great to see you here, Mike. Working with the Department of Labor, veteran unemployment is down by half in the last 5 years. Record low levels. Unemployment for post 9/11 veterans is down by more than 70%. Over 360,000 veterans and their family members have been housed, rehoused, or prevented from falling into homelessness. 28 communities and 2 states have achieved an effective end to veteran homelessness. Veteran homelessness is down 32% in Los Angeles over the last year, despite the fact that homelessness in Los Angeles went up 6 percentage points overall. Veteran homelessness is down nationally, 47% since 2010. We've cut it in half. 84 community veteran engagement boards have been established in the country in a little over a year. These community veteran engagement boards are local partnerships where veteran stakeholders, staffs of members of Congress, VA officials, all get together in the community and work to customize the programs that come from Washington, D.C. to meet the local veteran need. Our goal is to have 100 of these boards by the end of the year. Actually, my goal is to have many more than that. But here's the point. With vital collaborative networks extending from national to state to local government, there's no limit, absolutely no limit, to what we can do for veterans and for veteran caregivers. Earlier this month, I was in Togus, Maine, helping to celebrate the 150th anniversary of our very first VA site. Imagine that, 150 years ago. President Lincoln and Congress worked together to set aside this site. It was an abandoned resort during the Civil War. It was built before the Civil War. During the Civil War, it went bankrupt. And the Congress and President Lincoln bought it, and they turned it into the National Asylum for Disabled Volunteer Soldiers. And it was the cornerstone of a new network of national homes that would become the Veterans Administration in 1930. Remember, in the Civil War, 50% of the soldiers who fought in the Civil War were immigrants. Many of them came to this country for the promise of freedom, but they did not have a family. So after the war, the military was their family. This asylum, this national asylum in Togus, is where they lived. It's where they worked. Many of them suffered injuries that we know more about today, things like post-traumatic stress. Nobody knew what that was in the Civil War. Back then, it was about getting ready for what most everyone knew was coming as hundreds of thousands of Union veterans aged. They'd need specialized care for their injuries, which was unique to that battlefield, unique to that warfare, and unique to the Civil War. And they knew that if they weren't suffering yet, that in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they would be suffering. Thanks to some visionary leaders, that first single modest home for veterans is now the Department of Veterans Affairs. Over 350,000 people serving veterans at over 1,200 healthcare facilities across the country. Veteran caregivers and all those working to support them have their own visionary. Senator Dole's leading you, inspiring and inspiring me and inspiring thousands like you, just like Abraham Lincoln began this process of setting up these homes for veterans. It was visionary. Yesterday, Senator Dole announced a vision for veteran caregivers. Elizabeth described an America where every veteran caregiver is empowered, is appreciated, and is recognized for their service to our nation. It's going to take some incredible, innovative people to achieve that vision. It's going to take all of us working together collaboratively to achieve that vision. It's going to take all of us causing everyone else to focus on doing the harder right rather than the easier wrong to achieve that vision. It's going to take all of us working together to transcend the mundane issues that we face every day and keep our eye on providing care for veterans and their caregivers. And I think as we look around the room, we realize we can do it. We've got the people, we've got the visionaries, we have the partnerships, and working together, I think we can get it done. May God bless you all. God bless our veterans. God bless the caregivers. God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I've worked for Bob for the last 2 years, and I've got to see him up. I've been able to see him up close and personal, and I want to tell you, I've never seen a senior leader that works as hard as he does. His responses to emails and texts are legendary within the senior leaders. You could be a Sunday and watching your Cincinnati Bengals at home, and he'll text you back in 5 minutes, or he'll email you back in 5 minutes. Just unbelievable. Here's a guy who gives his cell phone number out at his first press conference. I mean, just to be accessible, to be there for veterans, to be there for caregivers, to be there for Americans. Unbelievable. Bob is passionate. He's transparent. He's trusting. He's the best boss I ever had. And on behalf of everybody here, Bob, we want to thank you for your leadership in transforming the VA. One of the areas that we've transformed the Department of Veterans Affairs has been in the area of partnerships. That's been alluded to time and time again here. Partnerships, believe it or not, was sort of a dirty word prior to Secretary McDonald. And I think there's absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that we are open for business as far as partners are concerned. And as I mentioned before, I'm so proud of what we've done. I know Bob is proud as well, and I mentioned all the partnerships. And when you think about all the statistics that he mentioned as far as homelessness and mental health and employment, I mean, it's hard to believe. I'm working every day at the VA on all this stuff, but when I hear the statistics sitting in the audience, it's truly amazing. One of the great partners that we have is a company called Philips. Now, they also happen to be the signature partner, the signature sponsor here for this event. In addition to that, they were one of our signature sponsors for our first Pathways to Innovation event, which this is also, called Brain Trust. So I'd like to introduce Artie Arthur, who is the VP of Federal Business for Philips, and she'll be talking about the integration of technology in the lives of caregivers. Artie?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. So on behalf of Philips, I am so honored to be here for such a special event. Senator Dole, listening to you yesterday was such an inspiration to so many of us. You have no idea. You're a warrior. I think on behalf of all of the caregivers here today, I can tell you that so many people think of you as such an inspiration to the caregiver community. Just for those of you that weren't there yesterday, the words that came out of the mouths describing Senator Dole, angel, amazing woman, supporter. I think somebody called you a superwoman, and I would agree. Secretary McDonald, I have to tell you, the way you've been transforming the VA has been just amazing, and I think all of us would agree that we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. You're transforming not just the VA, but the veterans and their lives, and it really is showing. So thank you so much to both of you. So a lot of people don't know that Philips is actually a health technology company. We have been working with the VA for over 40 years in the space of medical imaging, patient monitoring, as well as telehealth. One of the areas that we have, that we were just focused on that Matt was addressing earlier was the VA's Brain Initiative and the Brain Trust event that we partnered with the VA on. And I'm so thankful that we get to partner in the caregiver community event as well today. But I want to go back to the brain event because one area that I didn't realize that would really touch home for me personally was the caregiver side of it. We walked into the Brain Trust event as a med technology company thinking we were going to change the world with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. And I met thousands of people there that were just amazing. But there was one woman that really stood out to me. And I want to take a moment to share with you a little story about her. She's what we would call here a hidden hero. She's a mother, she's a wife, and she's a daughter. She's a wife of a veteran who has post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. She's also a mother of a child with autism. And she's the daughter of aging parents. It was really amazing the similarities that we shared friend to friend, and we've grown a relationship throughout this event. And, you know, the one thing that really was just a takeaway for me was how much people don't realize that none of us as caregivers want to be felt sorry for. We want strength, and we want to know what we can do, not what we can't do, and how innovation and technology can really help us get to where we want to be. I have to say, as part of an employee of Philips, I can't tell you how excited I am to work for a company that really is investing in technology and innovative solutions. If you think about healthcare and analytics and all the data that you need to get to your hands as caregivers today to help with care coordination, Philips is getting there. And we're here today to support this event because we know that we want the best for all of the veterans, but also their caregivers. Philips is also collaborating with 14 industry innovators to support open innovation and collaboration around aging. The Aging Well Hub is a relatively new research hub where we're examining best practices for aging well. The research hub includes caregivers, aging adults, industry partners, non-for-profit and for-profit agencies. And really the goal is the vision to ensure a connected ecosystem where aging is the norm rather than the exception. We're really excited to be here today and to work through how we can improve the lives of the veterans and the caregivers and to reach our vision of improving 3 billion lives by 2025. Thank you so much.